everyone. Today is going to be a different type of video, one that's a whole lot more personal than normal. On my channel, you see a filtered version of my life. I sit down to make a video and I'll shoot for 30 minutes and screw up constantly. And then I edit out all the garbage down to 5 minutes where I talk clearly, have energy, I'm articulate, and then I use color correction. I do everything I can to try to look my absolute best. Over on Instagram, I take hundreds of pictures and select the 3 where I look the best and construct the narrative that I want you to believe about me, about being fun, energetic, doing lots of stuff, being a family man. It's all through the grid of what I want you to know about me. And if you've ever been tempted to compare your life to my life, you're not really comparing our two lives. You're comparing your life to my highlight reel. You're comparing your blooper reel to my best of. And I think it's really important to frequently call that out, be transparent, and let you know really what's been going on behind the scenes with me, what my life is really like, and not just put on this facade of being this fantasy version of myself that has always had everything together and just makes things work magically, because that's not true, and that's not what I want my channel to be about. I want to be honest and transparent with you, and today seems like pretty well the perfect day to have a day where I go behind the scenes and let you know more about me. Today, I am 3 years sober. 3 years without having consumed any alcohol, as I am an alcoholic, trying to recover. And I frequently talk about on my channel how when I started my channel, I was unemployed. I was in a really low place. And when I say all of that, that's a euphemism for my alcohol addiction, my alcoholism had shipwrecked my life. It had taken me to a place where there were no good options and had messed up my job situation, my family life, everything, because it had consumed my life to such a level that I'd kind of burned everything to the ground. And that's where I was at when I started this channel. At the point in time when I posted my first review for Sean Chandler Talks About, I was in an intensive outpatient rehab program for addiction. It's tough to know exactly when everything kind of got out of control and at what point in time would you say I became the alcoholic, or what language you would properly apply to that. But it probably started somewhere around 2011. I worked at a church from 2008 to 2016 as a youth pastor working with teenagers. And when you're in an environment like that, you have a tremendous amount of pressure on you and stress, because your life is dedicated to helping people and carrying their burdens and helping them in their times of need. And that takes a lot out of you. And somewhere around 2011, I started turning to alcohol a little bit too much to cope with that. And then in 2013, it's just a tremendous amount of tragedy in the community, in my church, in my family, very close to me. And therefore, at that point in time, I just kind of dove very heavily into serious alcoholism at that point in time. And that kind of continued for 2013 until June 5th, 2016, where my life imploded. Before I dive into all of that, I should probably rewind and give you some kind of the full history on all of this before I expand on when things got really bad. I grew up with an alcoholic father. He was a highly functioning, severe alcoholic, very high up at Dell, very successful businessman, well-liked by his peers, extremely intelligent. So much of who I am, my personality, my gifts, everything comes from him. But also he is a severe alcoholic. And by the time I have memories, by the time I was, old enough to, remember things happening, he was already pretty well into just being an alcoholic. And so pretty much all of the memories I have of him do involve alcohol to some extent, except a few kind of windows in time. And my elementary school years were memories of trying to find him at bars, weird lecture scenarios of him coming home very drunk and behaving insane, essentially, at our house and things like that. I didn't think of it this way at the time, but as I grew older, I realized there was some abuse that happened related to the alcohol. Never when he was sober or anything like that, but there were some incidents where he was just so drunk that he did things that certainly I would call abuse if I observed it in any other family. And that's kind of what I grew up in, severe alcoholic right there in my side. So I never drank alcohol when I was underage and partied or anything like that. And even some of the movies that I review and things I'm not all that interested in reviewing, movies about teenagers going to parties, getting drunk and screwing each other have never had much like a strong interest in me. Maybe if they're funny, but like that was just never my upbringing because I saw the destruction of that from my father. So I wasn't interested in heading in that direction when I was that age. I didn't do anything like that. My dad actually drank himself to death when I was 20 in a very traumatic way it played out, dramatic, traumatic, all of those things mixed into one of it was very sudden while at the same time kind of being stretched out a little bit in different ways. And seeing him, this very intelligent, powerful man that was able to command the respect of a room and accomplish so much, just kind of destroyed by his addiction and just watched it kind of right there in front of my face. Is a extraordinarily defining thing inside of my life and as to who I am. And so I never really drank alcohol until I was over 21. It wasn't that I started like partying as a kid. It was nothing like that. In fact, I didn't start drinking alcohol until I think it was 21 or 22. And there was an incident that happened where it looked like one of my friend's brother might have attempted suicide. There was like this incident, that sort of thing that happened. In fact, I didn't drink alcohol until I was 21 or 22, and I can't go into too many specifics because enough people are watching this. I don't want people to put too much together, but essentially there was a traumatic incident that happened involving someone very close to me. And they showed up at my house with some alcohol and like, I don't know how I'm going to get through today. I'm going to drink. I would prefer if you joined in with me. And it was one of these tragic enough things that you're not going to blame anyone. Like if there's a good excuse to drink, this is a good excuse to drink. And so then we did. We're a safe environment. Weren't driving. We're literally at my home in a place where as safe as it could be. And I'm overage. There's like literally nothing legal or anything like wrong with that. But there's a side to me thinking, I know my dad's an alcoholic. I need to be smart about this. I shouldn't go too far into this. So I didn't take up drinking at that point in time. Like 6 months later, a year later, my grandma died and we were at the funeral. And once again, safely at a home, there's alcohol there, tragedy, recent death. And so drank again. And 6 months after that, something else happened. And for, 5 years, 6 years, for a good while there, that's kind of what I did. If there was like a really bad death, there's real bad tragedy, that's a good enough reason. I'm a grown-up. And by all estimations, that's for most people, that's a totally healthy, normal thing that you can do. But also, if you know, you probably have genetics of an alcoholic and addiction tendencies and tend to go all in on things. And I tend to go all in on things, hence why this YouTube thing has worked. Probably should be wiser in what you choose to do and what you choose to set up as your coping mechanism when bad things happen. And while this wasn't like this big thing, at the time you wouldn't look at it as like this big warning sign, but I was creating a pattern in my life of when something bad enough happens, when something stressful enough happens, it's okay to do this thing that I would otherwise say, I personally probably should stay away from this or be very cautious with this. Then when I've been married for a year, right at a year, 51 weeks, 1 week before our 1 year anniversary, my wife and I's apartment was broken into. And I was a student at the time. I didn't have a job. I was a full-time student. She was kind of supporting me with the job. I guess was a gold digger. And Christmas break, our apartment gets broken into. And I mean, just totally tore the place to pieces. As violated as you can feel from a break-in. It was what this was. Tore everything apart. And since I didn't have school, I'm just at home. What I decided to cope with like the feeling of violation was to drink. And I think this is the first time I ever had this like, I'm not doing anything. I guess it's okay to drink, several days in a row and just kind of, I have nowhere to be. I have nowhere to drive, no responsibilities. School doesn't start back up for 3 more weeks. I'm just going to drink away the feelings of all of this. And that's what I did. Once again, establishing that pattern of bad thing happens, I can justify unwise behavior for me. Graduate, I went to Bible college to go be a youth pastor. And another one would be a weird thing that, during Christmas break for Bible college, going off and getting drunk for the whole Christmas break because you're sad about getting broken into. Probably not the wisest choice. Graduated from Bible college and pretty quickly got a job at a church. And I at the time I wouldn't have said I had a drinking problem because I didn't in any sort of normal sense have a drinking problem. You could look at my behavior. If you were a fly on the wall, you wouldn't notice anything weird about my drinking because the problem was in that it was a coping mechanism for a specific thing. And so get the job and things go pretty well. And they actually hired me part-time and then full-time pretty quickly. And things were pretty great. And after I'd been there not too long, when churches deal with people's lives, some things get crazy. They get stressful. And around 2011, a lot of things were stressful related to whether, things happened with students, transfers, moves, all kinds of things. And so I'd made drinking X amount per week okay. I kind of said it's okay if I do that, just this amount. Because if anyone else did that, wouldn't be a big deal. So I can do that. And so then it starts with every Sunday night, I need to unwind for like these are 12, 13-hour days for me. I need to unwind from that. So I get to drink Sunday nights. It was that sort of thing. And then Sunday nights turned into, but Wednesdays are also really stressful. So there was also Wednesday nights. It was kind of creating a pattern of where it wasn't just when a tragedy happens, but every week I'm stressed, so it's okay. And I started those sorts of thinkings, deceptions, lies in my head of why it was okay to start drinking. I'm drinking when I know me, my dad's history, probably my genetics, my tendency to be all in on things, and I still went with it. Then 2013 happened. I actually kind of started December of 2012. And really, there's a suicide in the community that really, a teenage suicide that rocked the whole city. And being a youth pastor, working with the high schoolers, very heavily plugged in front lines of counseling people. And there were more deaths, more tragedies. Both my grandparents died. There was something like 10 people died. There was this huge number, or not 10, 20 people died that had some sort of close connection to me. And my grandparents were the only ones that were like over the age of 65. Everyone else felt like they were too young. A lot of them were teenagers, 20s, 30s. And some people in the nature church world as well, like I said, you deal with, everything about everyone. You know about every divorce, every affair, every addiction. You know this stuff about people, and you're trying to help them, and you really care, and you care about them, and you care about the kids, you care about the parents, you care about everyone. Some people can be front lines, compassionate, empathetic, helping people, and then go home, and it's off their shoulders. They're fully present, but then they can leave it behind. And I'm not that person. I'm a person that I go home and I replay it in my head. What could I have said? Could I have done better? Could I have helped more? Oh, I should have said this. And some of it's a perfectionism. Some of it's the nature of the way that I process emotions and deal with other people. And so for me, I would go home and I would just have all this weight. And then the next thing happened, I'd have more weight and I'm running on emotional empty. And so I just had nothing left. And turned to alcohol as my coping mechanism of the healthy things, of the spiritual things, of the biblical things I could have done to try and deal with all of it, or just realize I'm not the person that has the strength, the emotional depth, or the way I'm just wired is probably not the best for the position I currently have. I need to get out of here before I get in real trouble. My pride wouldn't let me do that. I was like, no, I'm going to push through this, but I need something to deal with this. And so I would drink away sorrow and that, and the pain and the tragedy and the thoughts and everything. So I could sometimes just so I could sleep. And that started about 2013, led to about 3 years of hardcore alcoholism. And 3 years of being like, whoa, I'm in trouble. This is bad. And like my wife would figure out just how bad it was. And she'd like, you need to stop. And so then I would like, here's what I'm going to do. And I'd come up with this big thing. And through my willpower, I would stop for 2 weeks. And then I would just kind of go back into it. Through my willpower, I would stop for 2 months. And then I would go back into it. And it was 3 years straight of that, of the lies, the deception, everything that goes along with addiction. I had all of it. And my wife being the primary victim, because she was the one that kind of knew things were going on. Everyone else kind of didn't know. They probably, I'm sure people knew something was wrong with me, that I wasn't healthy. I was in a bad place. They did not know it was alcohol. They didn't know it was an addiction of that sort. Because I had the curse of my father had that being a functioning alcoholic, which is being functional while being an alcoholic is really a curse. It seems like, oh, this is awesome. I can burn at both ends. But no. It's that you're poisoning yourself and you need to have the consequences of that. And I didn't have enough of them present. And so I was just digging this deeper and deeper hole. And what I didn't know at the time that I know now is when you do this start, stop of drinking, stopping, and then you go back to it. And when I would go back, I would just go hardcore, straight to hardcore, full-blown addiction, and maybe even further than ever, and more lies because, my wife thought it's been doing good for 3 weeks. And so now I got to lie even more. That's like the least healthy thing. That's just the worst way to drink. It's like the most damaging to like these hard stops because your body keeps rewiring itself by what you're doing. And you can do serious permanent damage by doing that. So going into late May 2016, generally speaking, I'd had a pretty good past period of time of having some success fixing myself, stopping on my own willpower, doing it on my own. And for whatever reason, going into the last week of May, I just had this just hard relapse. I mean, I know some of the things that were kind of the triggers for it, but there's no real good reason. There's no good reason in any side of this, really. It wasn't like a tragedy that happened. It wasn't this big thing. Just stupid little things that I hadn't fixed myself. I hadn't put myself together. I just stopped acting on my addiction and gave myself a good enough excuse and just relapsed hard going into that last week. I mean, from 0 to 11 on the insanity, the addiction, the lie, all of it. Dangerous behavior, just reckless type thinking. And up to this point in time, like I said, I'd done a pretty good job of keeping it a secret of what was going on. But for whatever reason, this time the insanity started to seep through and people started to figure out like, this is not good. And so then at the beginning of June 2016, my whole life imploded. And the timing could not have been worse. This was going into probably the biggest week or the biggest week event of the whole year for me as a student pastor. We had this big kind of student leadership event, like 250 teenagers at a church, like one city over about 15 minutes from here. And I'm one of the faces of it, leading the event that's going to be on stage, doing some of the teaching and that kind of thing. And I've just been bonkers the last week in the depravity of addiction. And a guy picks up on this and he goes and confronts me and is like, what's going on? I'm like, oh man, I just haven't been sleeping well. I haven't been feeling well. Like, no, seriously, like I've seen you weird. I've seen you tired. You've never been like this before. Like, oh no, man. It's just, I took some medication. It didn't sit well with that doesn't sound right. Like you seemed like you were drunk, like some of this stuff. Like you literally seemed drunk in some of the ways I observe you. Like, oh no, man, of course not. Of course I wouldn't do that. So for like 2 days straight, he's, what's going on? What's going on? And so finally, he's like, man, whatever's going on with you, whatever this weirdness is, like you need to go home, sleep, get a good night's rest so you can come back and not be doing this. Because whether you are drunk or you're not drunk, you're not healthy enough. So I go home. My wife's like, why did you get sent home? That's weird. And I'm like, okay, well. So it all comes out and I tell her I've had this. She didn't know. She didn't know. She thought I hadn't had a drink in 6 months or something like that. And everything kind of comes out. And just sitting there in that night, thinking through everything, have the realization, like, what am I doing? I'm a youth pastor. I work with teenagers and I'm a hypocrite. I'm not doing what I teach. I'm living recklessly, dangerously. Like I, of course, shouldn't be a youth pastor, youth worker working with teenagers right now. If this is what's going on in my life, I need to change. And thought through all of it. And that night kind of went, this is it. I'm going to burn it all down. I'm done. And so then the next day, actually just to get as healthy as I could, I went to emergency clinic to go to the hospital to get healthy and sent in the letters that kind of eventually turned into being my resignation of working at the church. This is James 4:6. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. For years, this is a verse that I had taught other people in kind of even one of my like signature sermons that I did. One of the things I was kind of known for was even using this verse to help people break free of their sin and their addictions and the things that were holding them back from being the best version of themselves. And I hadn't been applying it to myself, like at all. And if you're not churchy, if you're not religious, if you're not in church world, you might hear words like sin and things like that, and you think Christians use that as a term they used to talk about sinners or those people over there and tell other people how to live their lives and things like that. That's not really the way it's supposed to work. It's actually totally backwards. Christianity is not about telling other people how to live their lives or what they're supposed to do. The idea is that there's a sin out there that we've It says in Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And you can look at yourself. We all know that we've done bad things. We've all done things we wish we hadn't done. Even the best person you know has had their moments where they've done evil things. And that's when we say sin, that's really what we mean, that everyone has sinned. And it's never been about changing other people's behavior, and it's never been about behavior modification. The central premise of Christianity is that the solution to sin, the idea of transformation, comes from transformation on the inside, and Christ working through you through his death on the cross to transform you on the inside, which leads to a change of behavior on the outside. It's never been about the sort of idea of passing laws and telling other people how to behave. That's behavior modification. This is not Christianity. It's not the whole idea at all. Life transformation comes from a change within. It says, James, God opposes the proud and he gives grace to the humble. The proud person says, I can fix myself. I can change my behavior. I can do this on my own. I can do it. The proud person is all about the behavior modification, the change of action. But as a Christian, that's not what I believe where transformation actually comes. Even that's what I was trying to do for years. I was saying, okay, all right, I'll go to these AA meetings on myself. I can't tell anyone what's going on. I don't want to let people to know. I don't want to lose my reputation. So I got to fix myself before I let people know what's going on. That's the opposite of how it's supposed to work. I was much more worried about what people thought of me and people thinking I'm a good person than trying to be a good person. And that's a problem. That's superficial and it's phony. And that was so much of what was holding me back. I would not do what I needed to do because I did not want people to know what was really happening with me. So what ends up happening is I reached that moment in time, that low point, where it hit me. I am sick and tired of trying to look holy and righteous. I am ready to change on the inside. I don't want to just change my behavior on the outside. I want to change on the inside. God gives grace to the humble. The humble person doesn't care what people think about them. The humble person says, I can't, but you can. The humble person thinks, I need God to change me on the inside. And that's kind of where I found myself in June 5th, 2016, and had that moment of, as they say in church, where repentance, which is change of your direction. You're heading in one way and you change your way of thinking entirely, turn around, and had that moment. And it had to be as dramatic. In my case, because I worked at a church, it was about as dramatic as it could be. And it was in the middle of this big, gigantic event week. So it meant, in my case, essentially resigning from my job, leaving my ministry, and having to confess to a whole bunch of people that thought I was up here. Like, if they put your youth pastor up on a pedestal, it turns out, no, I'm like not above anyone else. I'm in my own ways worse than everyone else because I am in the position and behaving badly while teaching everyone else to do different. I'm the hypocrite too. And so I had to own all of that and feel the humility that comes with that. But the other side to that is that you experience the grace that comes with that. That, as I said before, Christianity has never been about fixing yourself, being good enough. It's the whole central idea is that you're not good enough and that we are sinners saved by grace. That's the whole idea of the gospel. That's the general idea of it. And I'm obviously, of course, getting very religious and churchy and all this, but it's my story. That's what happened. And I'd be dishonest with you if I tried to tell you like, oh, I read this book on how to stop drinking and that's how I stopped drinking. That's not really what happened. What happened was I put into practice what I'd been preaching for the previous 8 years. And it's all about grace, repentance, acknowledging that you're a sinner, turning it over to Christ for transformation, and turning it over to the community, and presenting yourself as a sinner to the community in need of help. So that was 3 years ago, and not one drink since then. And like we're still attending the same church that I worked at. A lot of times churches kind of get known for when the pastor finds out something happens and then they kick him out for embarrassment. That's not what happened. The reason that I was able to be successful and grow and was because I had a community of people at the church that I'd been at all those years and still am at, were around me, helping me in the time that I needed what the church had to offer. And I know there's bad churches out there and bad church experiences. I can't say that that's what my experience was when I came forward with my sin. And in fact, actually, this upcoming Sunday, I started working with the youth band a couple months ago, and this Sunday will be the first Sunday that we'll be playing Sunday morning. So it's after 3 years of not being in youth ministry, this week actually looks like I'm kind of going back into it. which is pretty cool, the timing of that. And the reason I share all of this is that for years, the reason I didn't seek help or do what I knew that I needed to do is because I did not want people to see me the wrong way. I did not want people to see me for who I really was. I wanted to control the way I was perceived and what my reputation was. And because of that, it wrecked me, it wrecked my family, it made me a hypocrite, and it had huge consequences for the church that I was working at as well. And by breaking that pattern and humbling myself, that's where transformation came from. And over the last 3 years, I've been blessed with a very large platform. 113,000 subscribers, which is mind-blowing that many people care what I have to say about anything. But I've been blessed with this platform, and I can use it to repeat the patterns I did before and present the version of you that I want you to see, that's a better version of me, that's slick on the outside and doesn't have any struggles. Or I can use my platform to spread a message that can help other people. I can use it to help people realize that just because I've got this channel doesn't mean that I don't have some serious struggles and haven't worked through a lot of things to get here. I want to use this platform to tell the message that this is my highlight reel that you're watching. You're not watching the full story. This is the highlight reel. You got to know that about all the people you follow. They all are people too. They all have issues too. I want to spread the message that I'm a sinner saved by grace, that I can't do it on my own, that I need community. That's what I want to use my platform for, and hopefully if you've been watching through this whole video, something in here kind of has been helpful for you in processing through your own struggles. Whether you're someone that's struggling with your demons or wanting to chase your dreams or feeling like you've hit rock bottom, hopefully something in my story can be inspiring to you. When I started my channel, I was unemployed. I was at rock bottom. I was in rehab. It was the lowest point of my life when I first picked up the camera to start reviewing Ghostbusters. And what I can say is 3 years later, I'm 3 years sober, and I've turned my lifelong love of talking about movies into a full-time career. Transformation is possible. People can change. You can change by the grace of God, and dreams do come true from time to time. So thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.